Hope you're all doing well. This is actually being recorded on Thursday because I'll be away on a trip through Monday this weekend. So I wanted to get this in. We are doing a spin-off mini-series on our what was supposed to be a little series on little things that turned into a big series on little things. It's kind of like television shows, right? Like television shows will spin off this show and that show and all. So we have two spin-offs coming. This one today that we're going to start looking at Gideon, one of the judges of Israel. And there's a reason why there's a connection between Gideon and our previous Little Things series, and you'll see that in a moment. And we're also going to follow it up with a little bit of a deeper dive into Matthew chapter 18 that we looked at on last Wednesday and take a little bit more of a look at what does it mean that there is sin in the church. There are still, even though we are followers of Jesus, we're not perfect. There's sin in the church, and how do we address that? But that's coming. Right now, we're going to do hopefully a five-part series on Gideon himself, a very interesting Old Testament character. But to give you a little bit of background, what the book of Judges is about is a period of time in Israel's history when Israel did not have a national leader. God did not set it up like that. Moses was a very strong leader, and Joshua followed him as a very strong leader. But God was meant to be the head and leader of their country, something called a theocracy. And then there would be leaders under that, priests and prophets and other people, but generally often not a main leader during this period of time. And so if you look at this chart that I put up, the goal was that people would trust and obey God with all of their hearts, all of their soul, all of their mind, as Deuteronomy says. There's one problem, however. There was a problem of continued rejection and disobedience towards God. So towards the end of the book of Judges, it describes the people this way, and this is what happened. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And when it says that everybody did what was right in their own eyes, it actually means everybody was doing wrong, but they were self-justifying it as right in their own eyes. And so people would fall into this period of disobedience. God would then have to punish them or discipline them, and he would send oppressors, people of surrounding nations to come and invade and take over their land and cause a great deal of suffering. As a result of the great deal of suffering, we keep moving around the circle. The people cry out to God for help. God then raises up a judge, and I forget how many exactly there are in the book, a whole series of judges who lead them back to repentance, in repentance to him. They acknowledge the wrong that they did. It almost always involved the worshiping of other gods, the taking on other people's religion rather than following the true God. So the judge, and one of them was even a woman, Deborah, would lead them back to repentance so their relationship with God restored. And now they're back in a place of trusting and obeying God. Unfortunately, human nature being what it is, it just kept repeating itself around and around and around in this spin cycle of obedience, trust and obedience to rejection and disobedience, to discipline, to suffering, to crying out, to God sending a judge. So we're looking at one of the most well-known judges. His name was Gideon. A little bit of background on Gideon is right here at the beginning of Judges chapter 6. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Okay, that's in our cycle right here. And for 7 years, he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. The Midianites were a nation that lived just to the east of Israel. They actually were related to the Israelite people, interestingly enough. Midian was a direct relative of Abraham. We know well the two sons of Abraham, Isaac, um, and he had one more son. Um, Isaac was the son of promise. Sometimes we don't realize after Abraham's wife had passed away, he went on to marry again and had more children, and one of them was a guy named Midian. So he's directly related to the Lord. Interestingly, they seem to have held on to a good, we'll call it religion, after Abraham dies. But after a period of time, they abandon that and then they go back to the worship of God or gods the way the people around them did. So the Midianites ultimately became kind of a bad people, but God used them to, as it says, impoverish the Israelites so that they cried out to the Lord for help. That's where we step in to the cycle. The Israelites have been doing wrong. They've been worshiping, setting up false gods and idols and all kinds of things. God had sent somebody in to oppress them. They are suffering greatly, and they're in the process of crying out to God. Now we're going to pick up our story. The angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak in Ophrah. That's not Oprah, that's Ophrah. That belonged to Joash, the Abiez, I don't even know how to say that Old Testament name, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. Now, right off the bat, I want you to take note of this. Gideon was threshing wheat. That likely meant, kind of in our modern terms, he came from a farming family. But he was doing it in a wine press, which is normally for grapes to make wine. Why would he be doing that? Because normally threshing of wheat is when the wheat is thrown up and down in the air so that what's called the chaff, the wasted part, blows away in the wind, but it kind of makes a cloud and it's kind of very obvious where it's taking place and where the wheat is lying. The Midianites, when they would see this cloud in the air, would go and take the wheat away. And so he's trying to contain all this, keep it out of sight, and he's doing it in a wine press. Now, an angel shows up. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, remember, Gideon is basically a farmer. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Isn't that a funny thing? A funny way to say it? I should show you that so that you see it. Right here, where if you can see my cursor. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon should have known something was up because Gideon was not a mighty warrior that I know of prior to this. If an angel of the Lord or the Lord himself appears to you directly, and he's probably not going to do that, this is unusual, but if he did and he was to say to you, mighty warrior, you got a tough task ahead. And so Gideon replies, and this is the spinoff from our Little Things series. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? And now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the Lord turned to him and said, he doesn't answer the question directly, go in strength, in the strength that you have, whatever that you can muster up, you go in that strength and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? So Gideon kind of objects again. Pardon me, O Lord, he replies, but how can I save Israel? This is the little people part. We often underestimate what the Lord can do through us. It's not about us. It's not about what we bring to the table. It's about what the Lord can do through us. Pardon me, my lord, Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh. That's that's the tribe that he comes from. And I am the least in my family. So he comes from a small tribe, comes from a small family, and he is small in his family. Three strikes going against him. And the Lord answered, I will be with you. I want you to catch that. This is the key. This is the thing I've been trying to drive home in a lot of our lessons and little things. It's not about you and me and what we bring to the table, although God will give us certain skills, certain backgrounds, certain experiences that can all fall into place. But mainly, it's about us being available, and it is God is the one that fights the battle through us. The Lord, that's what the Lord means when he says, I will be with you. And you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. We're going to look at that story of how God had Gideon do that because there's surprising things in that. But this is the guy that we're thinking about in this series now for just 5 lessons. This little guy from a little family who's from a little clan, insignificant, and God is going to do great things through him. Sadly, by the end of the story, Gideon is going to mess up and kind of abandon the faith himself, but we'll hold that lesson for a little bit. This is our lesson for today. I look forward to the next few lessons coming up. But between now and then, I hope you have a good couple of days.